Well, a very good afternoon and welcome to a warm and sunny Ballinamore in County Leitrim. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Pascal Derrien, who's the CEO of Migraine Ireland. And he's going to be telling us all about the work of Migraine Ireland, the fundraising they're doing, etc. But more about that in a couple of minutes. Before we get to that, I just want to make a quick mention in relation to the Micro Business Awards. So on Monday of this week, the finalists were announced for the Micro Business Awards, and there are a number of very happy and very surprised businesses to find they had made the finalist list, and we'd be delighted to see them all. The finals are on the 15th of October in the Osprey Hotel in Naas, and tickets are available now, but are selling out very, very quickly. The tickets are priced at €85, and the hotel have some discounted rooms available, but again, they are also filling up very, very quickly. Anyone that is interested in booking tickets or wants more information about the discounted rates for the hotels, the email address is on the screen there, microbusinessawards@gmail.com, and you'll find out all you need to know about it. So on that, we will get back to our discussion with Pascal. Pascal, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to come and join us today.
Thanks for having me, Rory.
Before we get into talking about your work with Migraine Ireland, etc., why don't you tell us a little bit about your own background, first of all, and how you've got to where you are at this stage?
I suppose I'm going to state the obvious. As you can guess, I was not born and raised in Ireland. I was born in Paris, but 3 days after I was in Germany, and I actually ended up doing 3 schools per year up to the age of 16. So I was always one accent behind, the story of my life to this day. Ended up in university, where by that I mean I went to the building, but I was far more interested in actually managing punk bands and writing and do all these type of things. So I'm kind of a college dropout to a certain degree, and I ended up joining a company called Sony for 8 days, and I ended up 8 years. And funnily enough, I became a manager at the end of 20 because the company was growing, and I could type on the computer with a finger, and I had 3 words of English. In the meantime, I met my wife, who's Irish, who, unlike me, has a brain. She was finishing her PhD somewhere in Pasteur. And we decided to come over to Ireland. I think originally I wanted to do it, and I moved for a year, and that was 25 years ago. I ended up working for companies like Gateway, Commercial. Then I worked for Microsoft for 15 years, heading various units. And 5 years ago, there was an opportunity to reassess a few things. So I left Microsoft. And I already had an interest in social justice, non-for-profit, all this type of thing, having sat on a few boards as well while I was working corporate. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to make the jump. So I worked for a project initially, which was Frontline Bikes, which has been recently awarded $500,000 from Pobol. Then I joined a community enterprise center called Spade, where I bagged 2 awards for them for a period of nearly 2 years. But I wanted to do something a bit more people-centric, and Migraine Ireland came my way. So I joined the organization a year ago. We are what we call a medium-sized organization because it's based on revenue rather than number of employees. There's 6 of them. I have a kick-ass team, I must say, and we're doing great things around migraine, which is obviously a chronic condition, and we do a lot of things primarily for patient and healthcare professionals, but we have also recently kicked a program on workplace. So that's me in a nutshell, I guess, Rory.
That's great. Thanks very much. So before we get into the work that you're doing at the moment, perhaps for people who may have misconceptions or misunderstanding, what do people who have migraines suffer from?
And actually, that's an interesting one. And we approach the workplace exactly with kind of a migraine 101, and we are targeting people who actually are not necessarily familiar. So one of our tagline, it's migraine is not just a headache. And if people fully understand that, it's actually a complex neurological disorder. Uh, the ratio is 70-30. 70% is for women, ladies, and 30% gentlemen. But also children. It tends to impact people in their prime from 20 and 30. It's a multidimensional condition. So there's more than one just migraine. It's called migraine. So you have hemiplegic migraine, you have a vestibular, you have obviously headache, aura, visual disturbance. It's actually pretty complex. So you have almost 10 to 12 type of migraines, and they are really debilitating. The WHO does rank it as fifth most debilitating for women and seventh overall. You have in Ireland, for example, you have 600,000 people who suffer from migraine. Uh, UK next door, 10 million. Worldwide, approximately 1 billion. The impact on the Irish economy is 260 million euros per year, and the loss of working days and so on. So 11% of migraineurs who are in employment, for those who can work, are actually also overlooked for promotions. There's a lot of stigma, trivialization, you name it. Uh, there's It's a condition that can actually be treated. Obviously, there's medication. You talk chronic conditions. There's treatment, acute, preventive, and also alternative. Uh, but it's a very complex condition, which even in healthcare professional setting is not overly well known. The training around migraine for a healthcare professional or a GP at the end of his courses is less than 6 hours. So you don't really, you are not able to address this. So there, it's really a hurdle from a diagnosis perspective for a migrainer, because you're more in a situation and a scenario when you rule out things and you narrow down to the end, unless you come across a neurologist. So if you go to your GP, it's the Russian roulette. You may be able to find somebody who's interested or not. If you go to any, same story. At neurologist level, they are obviously far more informed, but it's a rule out thing. So there's roughly 50% of people who are undiagnosed migraine, but it also takes between 1 to 7 years for any migraineurs to get a proper diagnosis. In the meantime, you have to live with a chronic condition, uh, which at best can rule out 2 days of your life per month, but also can be chronic and be more to 2 weeks, 3 weeks on a monthly basis. We know some people who actually cannot function at all. So has an impact on work life, social life, and the quality of life altogether.
So, is migraine currently recognized as a disability?
No, and actually, that's an interesting one, because we are, I have nothing against the sisters, so, but I'm going to use the term, we are a bit the ugly sister of neurology. Uh, uh, in neurology terms, in Ireland, 900,000 people suffer from a neurologic disorder. So whether it's Parkinson and so on, we do amount for 600,000. So we are very prevalent. We are on our neurology, we are on a fringe as well of neurodiversity and on disability. It's one of those non-visible uh, disability. It's debilitating. Sometimes so we on the fringe. Is it recognized officially? No, per se. Having said that, reasonable accommodation and so on do apply, but it's not as, I suppose, as straightforward as any other condition. So because you appear pretty normal to anybody, and it's in the same vein that other chronic conditions that may be diabetes, uh, obviously other epilepsy and so on. So it's not necessarily visible. However, Migraine Ireland, we are a member of DFI, which is a Federation of Disability in Ireland, obviously NAI and so on. So there's some work to be done at official level. So I let you guess how far away we are actually in the public domain to convey the message that actually migraine is far more than just a headache.
Absolutely. Just one comment we've had come into us there from Maggie Geraghty to say what an interesting background you have. But that's why was so keen to get you on the show, and I know we've been trying to tie up schedules for a while, but because of the fact your background is so interesting, that's why I thought you'd make a great guest.
Or there, thanks, Max. I'm very humble. It's just happened by accident. There was no plan.
Yeah. So, as it stands at this moment in time, what research is going on into migraine?
So, compares to other conditions, uh, research is a bit of a hit and miss. Partially because while it's highly debilitating, it's not necessarily a fatal or lethal condition. And that's an important point. Some in a healthcare field, there are some researches, a little bit disjoint. They're not global. Some people are really at the forefront, so but it's really around medication. The reason why it's because it's a neurologic disorder. So as opposed, for example, let's say diabetes, you don't necessarily have any biomarkers. Uh, so it's really a rule out. And it's actually so complex that I would say it's probably not prioritized at lab level. So having said that, a lot of pharmaceutical companies are doing Trojan work uh, when it comes to beta blockers, triptans, and all these type of things in order to help people to manage the condition. Uh, but there's no one size fits all, actually, unfortunately, to the approach to migraine, which is the same to epilepsy or Parkinson's or MS. Uh, However, for example, in Parkinson, you have biomarkers, for example, around the eyes and retina, which is not necessarily the case in migraine. So the research is obviously tends to be US driven, but not only. There's a few, I suppose, more authority around migraine around the world, but they're under, you can count them on your hand, namely Peter Gottby or Professor Dodik in the US. And they are really pushing, but we don't have the critical mass of bright minds in order to get some momentum. Uh, it's it's uh, it's frustrating for migraineurs. Funnily enough, we know that migraineurs sometimes have done more research and know more than some of their healthcare practitioners. They're all very well clued in. They understand medications and so on. Uh, but the research is not where we would like to be. Ourselves, we're not a foundation, so we have no vocations to do research. We're more advice, pointers, education programs. We do self-management courses, and we have an info line. However, we've been helping people sometimes around the psychology aspect and management of migraine, whether depression, PTSD, or whatever, and we use our own supporters, all the people who are supporting us, and they're all very willing to spare their time and fill up surveys and so on. So it's very disjoint, and advocate, and that's why you have actually we have a lot of sister organizations, and we all experience the same thing around the world. I engage while I work nationally and regionally, we also operate at European and international level. Uh, we all have a commonality, obviously, around the conditions, but also about the challenges in terms of bridging the gap in terms of knowledge. Our aim really would be to make ourselves redundant, but I won't see that happening. Maybe not in my lifetime, at least. It's getting there, but it's not. It's probably more around the management of the condition than finding a cure.
Right. And Mikey actually has another question for you. Are migraines becoming more common, or is it just that it's being identified more often now?
I would say, would you believe migraine was present in medieval times? Yet it was associated with guts and so on. Maybe not necessarily the right thing. However, it was there. So it's not a new disease or a new condition. I rather call it condition than disease. Uh, but over time, obviously, with knowledge and people access to knowledge, it's been identified quicker. That said, still the 7 year gap between initial diagnosis to final diagnosis on average in Europe. Uh, but it's more prevalent. There's also because of the emergence of organizations like us, the Neurology Alliance of Ireland, for example, who's doing a Trojan work around neurology by and large. I think there's more uh, we have helped modestly, at least in Ireland, to help people to point them in the right direction. Uh, but out of the 600,000 people we know we are identified, we are probably only reaching 1/3. And we know some people don't know about the condition. They may associate that with something else. So to your question, Max, it's kind of a non-answer. It's a yes and no. There's more work that needs to happen. I think if we say 5 years ago, absolutely, people know more, both in healthcare settings and at individual level. However, there's far more work to be done.
Right. Now, as you know, when clients come on or when guests come on my show, there is a question I like to ask them all. As no one would guess looking at me, I'm very, very fond of my food. So I like to ask all my guests, what for you like as your Lite Bite lunch? And being a good Frenchman, I'm sure there might be a nice bottle of red wine included, would there?
So would you believe I don't drink? So I don't drink wine. However, as a proud Frenchman, and actually my mom is flying over tonight, and one of the delicacies she's always making, and my kids are mad about it, and people think we are mad, is garlic snails.
Lovely.
And I can see people horror. So we don't do frog legs. It's an urban myth. I actually don't even remember having seen frog legs anywhere on any table when I was living in France. Now I'm gone a long time ago. But snails is one of the things where, and my kids as well. And my wife, obviously vegetarian, doesn't really entertain the idea of swallowing one of those. But yeah, we are still looked at with horror, and for us, it's a delicacy.
Yeah, no, I have experienced it done properly, served in the shell, the whole lot, and
Yeah,
you cannot beat a good bowl of escargot. I have to say now, absolutely. So that's what you'll be looking forward to.
yeah.
Um, in terms of fundraising, now we're going to talk about your upcoming cycle very soon. In terms of fundraising, how difficult is it to find new ideas and that type of thing as means of raising money, or is it just literally rehashing the same ideas over and over that there's nothing new left to do in terms of what you're going to be able to get insurance cover on, etc.
So, oh, Ireland is a very unique place insofar that for such a small country, I think there's between 8,000 and 10,000 charities of various sizes. Some are one-man show, they're not paid, it's volunteer, to people like us, we are called medium-sized because of our revenue, which is under 250 in full transparency. And we have 6 staff, to large organizations where they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. However, the commonality for all of us is obviously funding challenges. So uh, in healthcare setting, we have some core funding from the HSE. I'm being very transparent. It is out there. It's in the public domain anyway. Pro Bowl, some part of it, and then the rest, it's up to us. And then there, yes, people are at individual level. People are bombarded by requests.
Yeah.
So we do it. Sometimes I feel bad about it, but in charity, if you don't ask, you don't get. So we have to do it. We work with some corporate partners. We work with some organizations like legacy.ie. We work. So interestingly enough, I had commissioned a pro bono consulting organization because I could not afford a proper consulting to spend 3 or 4 months on, is there any low-hanging fruits or hidden germs out there for Migraine Ireland? And the good news is, the bad news was there's none. The good news is we had already done our job. Is there any breakthrough that we can go after, providing our bandwidth, skill set? Currently, no. So we also rely on individual giving. So we have what we call supporters. So we have sales management course, we have an info line, but we also have a closed platform, a peer-to-peer for migraineurs only by invitation, and it's people who pay us maybe 30 euros or more or less, depending on what they can afford. Uh, and they are part of our fundraising. Then people may do donation. We do roughly 50 events online per year, workplace and general public, and they are free. And for workplace, we ask for companies sometimes to make donation if they can. Some can, especially the banks. But from a general public, we just ask people if they can. If they cannot, they cannot. But we're doing that. So we always in a position of asking and almost begging at times. And yeah, we tight. We super tight. But I'm not unique in that situation. Most charities who are actually doing the work are actually tight. And interestingly enough, I will leave you with that thought as well. 70% of the service deliverable in disability in Ireland are delivered by charities.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, if anyone would like to make a donation um, outside of the cycle we're going to talk about now in a couple of minutes, I will leave the link running up there now to the end of the show so people can see the link.
Yeah,
And we will post it also on our LinkedIn and on the Facebook under this and
appreciate
on
that.
YouTube as well.
Yeah,
No,
appreciate
no,
that, Rory.
absolutely.
It's just even 2 euros, 3 euros, whatever people can. And if you cannot, just send us a thank you for the work we are doing. Encouragements are also welcome and well accepted.
Absolutely. Now, so let's get on to this. You have your big cycle on Saturday. This is your big fundraising event.
Correct. So we have so we're pretty excited about that one because Migraine Ireland, well, it's been done elsewhere, but Migraine Ireland has not done such a thing in its 30 years of existence. So we have a 100k, 50k cycle starting in Avonry in Blessington, and it's going to be flat. I know it's Wicklow, but it's going to be flat. Uh, and we are lucky enough to have Sean Kelly cycling with us. So it's a big event, and we decided to have a premium event. We could do just a cycle, but decided to get a good experience for people. So we have mechanics, cars, Sean Kelly, obviously, we have photographs. It's in Yeomanry, which is actually superb. We have an event company helping us as well to do things very, very professionally. So for us, it's going to be our inaugural one. We're planning to do that on a yearly basis. We may also do some maybe runs going forward, but this year we are really focusing on that, and it's on Saturday, the 25th of June. And we have two groups. The first group will be the 100K, and cycling as a peloton. And we will regroup with the 50K a bit later on, and we all finish together with Sean at the helm of the peloton.
Great, great. Well, it's going to be, I think it's definitely going to be a good day, and the weather reports are looking quite nice for Saturday too. So, to anyone up around Wicklow who may be able to see them on the
Yeah,
route, get out and support
yeah,
cyclists too.
absolutely. You may see us. We are planning to all wear our Migraine Ireland jersey, which has been commissioned for the occasion. And probably if you see just under 100 cyclists around Blexington around 2 o'clock, that's us. Give us a horn. Beep.
Absolutely. And I presume you'll have people out collecting with buckets along the way as well.
Absolutely. We have some people on site and obviously people online. So we have a bunch of volunteers. The Avonry is superb. You have food trucks. The scenery is superb. Actually, you have a greenway as well, starting from the Avonry. And the staff there has been so helpful in helping us to set up a really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, we're always happy to promote you in any way we can, any event you're doing. So, what more needs to happen, whether it be specific to Migraine Ireland, whether it be in relation to charities in general, in part to win back the trust? Because unfortunately, as we all know, there have been some, the media loves to report where charities are found to have been misappropriating or questioned
Yeah.
as to whether they've been misappropriating funds or whatnot. So,
Abs-
what more needs to happen to win back people's trust, to get people back trusting charities?
I think, well, it's fair to acknowledge that there's been a few bad apples who gave us gave the sector a bad name. However, hand on my heart, I think 98 to 99% of the charities are squeaky clean. We are following a very strict code, via its charities regulator, or else we get audited to death on a yearly basis every time you apply for funding. So, we are the wheel actually had taken an interesting take on it as a year, probably less than a year ago. They've launched this campaign called We Act, in order to actually change the minds and the hearts. At least, a lot of people trust us, to be honest. But, you have a few where, and I can understand why, some of the big charities have been, I suppose, misled. And I think it goes back to me to governance. I think there's a few things that needs to happen in the sector, and some charities are doing it really, really well. You need to get a turnover when it comes to governance and boards and so on. And at the same time, I would argue that needs to be the same at CEO or key positions level. I personally, and it's just me, so people can quote me, but not the organization. I don't think it's healthy having a CEO for 15 to 25 years in the same position at the end of a charity. The same way that actually a board member or a board chairman tends to change every 3 years, maybe we should have contracts renewable once in order to keep the things healthy as well. I think it's not good to have institutionalized staff. Now, the fundraising, go back, at least from the healthcare sector, I was talking about the 70% of the disability service being almost subsidized or outsourced to charities. That's all very well, but we need to get the funding to match.
Yeah.
And that's important. Also, the yearly approach around funding doesn't work because strategically, you need a multi-year plan. Whether it's in terms of deliverables, whether in terms of acquiring staff, retaining staff, all these type of things. Because while we all work for charities, most charities are still employers. And we
Absolutely.
have duty of care, all these type of things. And we need to develop people, they need to be successful, all these type of things. What people may not fully understand sometimes is most of us don't have pension, don't have bonuses. Most of us actually do a lot of overtime. We don't claim mileage, we don't claim expenses. So really, if you really want to make money, you don't work in charities. I can tell you, that's not somewhere where you want to go. But we tend to go there for other reasons. However, I think the reason why we go into it should not be taken advantage of. So funding is actually it's a stress test for any organization. And you have low visibility, you have 12 months visibility. It's
Yeah.
not really easy to manage any organization, whether it's potatoes, technology, or charity, with 12 months visibility.
Yeah. Absolutely. Maggie just wants to ask, and we're just about out of time, but I'll ask you this very quickly. Has the fundraising for Ukraine had a big effect on other charities?
My gut feeling, it has. Because, the situation over there is tragic. And you come with migraine for the sake of my product, for better words, which is there, connect. So at the pecking order, you back down. So
Yeah.
it's not as easy to mobilize. There's a seasonality in fundraising as well. We know it, and it goes back to if you have a great ambassador, it may happen. Charlie Bird has been brilliant for the charity in charge of his specific condition, and I'm delighted for them.
Yeah.
We don't have that, but Ukraine has impacted. Yes, it's also depend on your power in terms of communications. We are very, very strong on communications. However, we don't have the funding to do national broadcast.
Absolutely. Well, Pascal, unfortunately, time has caught up on us. Very quickly, if I can ask you finally, if anyone wants to get in touch with you to offer support of any sort, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Website is brilliant, migraine.ie.
That's absolutely brilliant. Listen, Pascal Derrien, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. That's all for this week's Lite Bite Lunch, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and we look forward to talking to you then.
Thank you.